ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
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 Okay, so welcome to this Bhakti Vaibhav session. We are discussing Canto 1 and chapter. Which chapter? 12th chapter. Yes. 12th chapter. Just see if you are awake. So, we discussed till verse 29. Okay, so we have to start with 30. And from 30 to 36 is how Maharaj Yudhishthira raises Parikshit Maharaj in luxury and in opulence, gives him culture, okay, teaches him all kinds of culture, and then performs horse sacrifices for mitigating the sin which he thinks he has apparently committed because of killing so many people in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Okay. So we'll start with verse text 30. The child would become famous in the world as Parikshit because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus, he would come to constantly contemplate him. Okay, so this is also one of the qualities or one of the characteristics of Parikshit Maharaj. So this text I did not include with the previous section, even though it is speaking about the characteristic, one of the characteristics of Maharaj Parikshit, because the previous section primarily dealt with what the Brahmanas are telling to Maharaj Yudhishthira based on his inquiry by seeing his horoscope. This is Suta Goswami, okay, speaking to Shaunaka Rishi and the other sages in Naimisharanya, and he tells them that he would become famous in the world as Parikshit. This word Pariksha is there. Pariksha means examination. So Parikshit means one who examines. He keeps on examining because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Okay, because he's always looking, the personality whom he saw, one thing is he could not forget him. Okay. Normally it is said when a child takes birth, then in third canto it's explained that if he is fortunate he'll be able to remember hundreds of his past lives. But then because of the pain that he suffers through during the birth, he forgets everything and becomes enveloped by illusion. But that was not the case with Maharaj Parikshit. Okay, whatever he saw within the womb of his mother, he is able to remember each and every feature of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, he always searched for the same personality who saved him. Because one thing is he was afflicted because of the Brahmastra, it was so agitating. And this personality, Paramatma, he came and saved him. So he's always searching, who is that person who saved me? Thus, he would come to constantly contemplate him. So because he's searching each and every human being, whomever he sees, he's thinking about that personality who came in his womb. Therefore, 24 hours meditating only on the Supreme Lord. Okay, so that way, a pure devotee always meditates on the Supreme Lord, always thinks about the Supreme Lord 24 hours a day. So this is the case. Okay, so thus he would come to constantly contemplate him, think about him. So Maharaj Parikshit's examination became his meditation. Okay, his contemplation on the Lord was constantly with him. Once the impression of the transcendental form of the Lord is fixed in one's mind, one can never forget him in any circumstance. Okay, if the impression is fixed in one's mind, then he cannot forget him in any circumstance. So the Lord was constantly with Maharaj Parikshit because of such examination. And Srila Prabhupada continues, and he gives quotes from Srila Jiva Goswami, and he says that Srila Jiva Goswami remarks in this connection that if impression of the Lord is given right from the childhood, then certainly one will become a great devotee of the Lord like Maharaj Parikshit. Because whatever impression child gets in his childhood, he will not be able to forget that. Okay. And especially that's true for the first formative years, till he's 12, 13, 14 years old. Whatever impressions on the kind of lifestyle that a child leads, then it remains with him throughout his whole life. Okay. So, Srila Prabhupada gives his own example, and he says that his father was a pure devotee, and when he was only 4 or 5 years old, he gave him the deities of Radha and Krishna, and he used to worship them. So that created a very strong impression in his mind, And also, the Radha Govinda temple is very near or very close to Srila Prabhupada's house at that time. So, he had this very good impression on the deities or on about Krishna consciousness. And Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami again revived his old habit. And the same playful deities became a worshipable deities in proper regulation. And he established so many temples. So Maharaj Prahalad also advised that such impressions of a godly relation must be impregnated from the beginning of childhood. Otherwise, one may miss the opportunity of the human form of life, which is very valuable, although it is temporary, like others. So, this whole institution of Gurukul is therefore very important. Srila Prabhupada stressed on that because whatever is taught, because this lifetime we have our prarabdha karmas, okay, and the formative years, this first 15, 20 years is where the samskaras for this particular life are, can say embodied, or they are samskaras for this life are absorbed basically in the consciousness. Okay, so whatever we do in the first 15, 20 years of our life, it continues. Okay, it remains with us for the rest of our life. Okay, generally it is seen that way. So if one is trained in proper spiritual culture, then that training remains with him for the rest of his life. But if one is not trained like that, and one is allowed to engage in uncontrolled sense gratification, then it becomes that much difficult. Even if he wants to regulate his life in the future, it becomes that much difficult, and people struggle with that because the impressions are very strong in the mind. The impressions are there in the mind, but that which is done in this present lifetime, they are much more stronger than that which comes from previous lives. So therefore, in the beginning of childhood itself, one must have this godly impression, impression about Krishna consciousness. Then he can take the opportunity of perfecting this human life. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Okay, text 31. As the moon in its waxing fortnight develops day after day, so the royal prince Parikshit very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full facilities of his guardian grandfathers. So Parikshit Maharaj was growing in a very nice environment, which basically suggests that as the Pandavas, or the environment in which he is being brought up, it's of devotion, and his training is perfect at this point. One thing is Maharaj Parikshit himself is an exalted personality, and on top of that, under care and full facilities of his guardian grandfathers, means their culture, their devotion, everything is being implanted to Maharaj Parikshit. Just at this time, King Yudhishthira was considering performing a horse sacrifice to get freed from sins incurred from fighting with kinsmen. But he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus funds outside of fines and tax collection. Okay. Srila Prabhupada writes that Brahmanas and Vipras had a right to be subsidized by the state, which basically means that taxes are not collected from Brahmanas, and learned Vipras. And he collects taxes only from the other varnas of the society. And the primary source of income or primary source of collection for the treasury is basically tax collection and fines. But for performing a horse sacrifice, so much amount more is required. So he was contemplating on what could be done. Text 33. Understanding the hearty wishes of the king, his brothers, as advised by the infallible Lord Krishna, collected sufficient riches from the north left by King Marutta. So it suggests that Krishna again came to Hastinapur. After he has left Hastinapur, he has entered Dwaraka. Now he is back after Maharaj Parikshit is born. So the details of Maharaj Marutta is mentioned here. And it's said that he was the son of Maharaj Amikshit and was a great devotee of the son of the sun god known as Yamaraj. He conducted a sacrifice called Shankara Yajna, by which the Lord was so satisfied that he was pleased to hand over to him the charge of a mountain peak of gold. So he gave him a mountain full of gold, and that was used for his sacrifices. And it's mentioned in the purport that so much sacrifice was given that the Brahmanas, they did not know what to do with so much wealth. So just left it there in the arena of sacrifice itself and went. Okay, so all those gold, golden plates, golden ornaments, and everything was golden. Everything was made up of gold. Everything was available in the same place because everybody was completely satisfied. Okay, and it's also mentioned due to his pious activities, he remained a young man throughout his life, and he ruled for 1,000 years. Okay. And Srila Prabhupada also writes here that even though this mountain of gold was still there, but during the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira also, people were so satisfied that they did not go and plunder the mountain to get some gold. Okay. They did not do that. And he concludes saying, the sacrifice for this age, the success of a particular type of sacrifice completely depends on the priest in charge. And in this age of Kali, there are no qualified Brahmanas. So we cannot perform sacrifices like this. So therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced this Sankirtan Yajna, which is the only sacrifice recommended for this age. By those riches, the king could procure the ingredients for 3 horse sacrifices. Thus, the pious king Yudhishthira, who was very fearful after the battle of Kurukshetra, pleased Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. So Maharaj Yudhishthira's point or his mentality was that by performing these 3 horse sacrifices, I'll please the Supreme Lord Hari. And this was the same for Krishna. Or it was the same purpose for which the Rajasuya Yajna was also done before. So before the battle of Kurukshetra, he did Rajasuya Yajna just to proclaim the glories of Krishna as he is the topmost personality. Okay, Arghya Puja was given to him first. And now to worship the Supreme Lord so that he can become free from the sins. That is a side, that's an indirect result of performing the sacrifice. The main point was to please Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada writes about Maharaj Yudhishthira's sense of duty and his detachment. Okay. So the learned Brahmanas could not, this is what we discussed now, that they could not take away all the loads of gold given by Maharaj Maruta, and therefore they left behind the major portion of the gift. And besides that, all the golden plates and utensils which were used in the sacrifice were also thrown in the dustbins, and all such heaps of gold remained unclaimed property for a long time. This means that the state citizens were completely satisfied with all necessities of life, and therefore not inclined to accept unnecessary productive enterprises for sense gratification. And Maharaj Yudhishthira also, he did not have any other ulterior purpose but to do this sacrifice for pleasing the Lord. Therefore, he had to collect the gold only for performing the sacrifice. He did not take the whole mountain of gold and then keep it in his treasury. Okay, that he did not do because he did not have the desire to collect them for the state treasury. And Srila Prabhupada makes an important point that satisfaction of Lord is necessary to counteract unintentional crimes. Okay, so each and every moment, we commit sinful activities even without our knowledge. So many living entities are being killed. Correct. So to counteract even such unintentional crimes, one must perform sacrifices as they are recommended in the revealed scriptures. So that includes, that is the Sankirtan Yajna. Srila Prabhupada quotes this Yajnarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. And he says that any act or even this yajna that is performed, it should be done only for pleasing Lord Vishnu. Okay. Or any activity that is being done, it should be done for pleasing Lord Vishnu. If that is not done in that way, then it creates karma bandhana. Okay. So the main purpose of performing sacrifices is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. And satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, Hari, that is the way of pious life. And in Kali Yuga, people engage in glorifying the Lord by chanting the holy name of Krishna without offense. And that by doing so, one can be freed from all sins. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes about sacrifice and how the sacrifices in this age is not possible, the kind of sacrifices that were being done in previous ages. And he also comments on the modern civilization where gold is not the economic standard, but papers and promises are. And this purport is quite nice. It's very explanatory in that sense. So all the points are explained very nicely by Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. Then he also speaks about animal sacrifice because it's mentioned here that he performed horse sacrifices, right? So are we not being cruel to the horse? So the point is, animals offered for yajna were rejuvenated to a new span of life by the transcendental power of chanting the Vedic hymns. So therefore, it was not sinful that way. Okay. And in this stage, Sankirtan Yajna is the ultimate solution. Yeah, it's a big purport, but quite explanatory. Very very nice about all the points which are mentioned in this. All the different aspects which are mentioned in this verse. Very nicely explained by Prabhupada. Text 35. Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, being invited to the sacrifices by Maharaj Yudhishthir, saw to it that they were performed by qualified, twice-born Brahmanas. After that, for the pleasure of the relatives, the Lord remained a few months. So he goes to Dwaraka, then each time he also comes back to please his devotees. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada once again comments on how one can be a Brahmana. Okay, just by taking birth in a Brahmana family, one does not become Brahmana, but one must be twice born by proper training and initiation from the bona fide Acharya. Srila Prabhupada writes 2 points here. One is training and initiation. So it's not, okay, in the age of Kali, the Pancharatrika system we discussed in previous purports. The Pancharatrika system is for those who are born in Kali Yuga as Shudras. There's a reformatory process for them. By taking up the process of Pancharatra, they can purify themselves. Correct? We discussed these 2 things, Garbhadhan Samskara and Pancharatrika system. Correct? So, in this age of Kali, people do not perform Garbhadhan Samskara. So, Kalau Shudra Sambhavaha. In Kali Yuga, majority of the population, or almost all of the population, is only Shudras. And Srila Prabhupada gives the option that by this, or rather, he explains that there is a way out to purify oneself by following this Pancharatrika system. And by following the Pancharatrika system, one can be elevated to the highest stage of Vaishnava from the lower stage of Shudra. Okay. So, but this Pancharatrika system, we should not think that it's only by initiation. Just by getting a second initiation, one becomes a Brahmana. It's also by proper training. So, training is also required. Okay. So, both these 2 things are required for a twice born to act like a twice born. Okay. Not that he just takes initiation, but he's not trained. Means, he's not acting. He will not be able to act as a Brahmana should act. Okay. He will not be able to carry out the activities of a Brahmana if he is not trained properly. So one must be twice born by proper training and initiation from the bona fide Acharya. So both are required. Okay. Yeah, and in this function, Krishna was entrusted to look after the arrangement that proper Brahmanas, proper twice born, were performing the sacrifices for successful execution of the sacrifice. Text 36. O Shaunaka, thereafter the Lord, having bidden farewell to King Yudhishthir, Draupadi and other relatives, started for the city of Dwaraka, accompanied by Arjuna and members of the Yadu dynasty. Okay, so this time Arjuna also went to Dwaraka. So this ends the 12th chapter, which basically explains the birth of Maharaj Parikshit. Okay. So, yeah. So after this, this 13th chapter is Dhritarashtra quits home. So now Suta Goswami was speaking to Shaunaka Rishi. He's again giving the context. Just like when he was asked about Shukdev Goswami and how Srimad Bhagavatam appeared, he started from how Vyasadeva compiled all the Vedic literatures. Okay, and then he was rejected. Then Narad Muni came. Then Narad Muni told about his whole, how he was in his past life. Okay, and then the whole history is narrated, and then finally he tells that he has to compile Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so there's a context. There's a context which is given so that one can understand how glorious the Srimad Bhagavatam is. Similarly, when it was asked by Suta Goswami, by Shaunaka Rishi to speak about Parikshit Maharaj, he started with how the battle of Kurukshetra ended and Ashwathama, he killed everybody and then he shot the Brahmastra so that Parikshit Maharaj would be killed. Okay, and then the punishing of Ashwathama. So this is the context. Okay, the whole situation is explained. Now setting the scene, as Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita as it is. So it gives you a context of what exactly is happening and in this particular situation all these things have been discussed. So here, to come to the point, now Parikshit Maharaj is born. To come to the point of how Parikshit Maharaj was spoken, Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a whole narrative, there's a whole thing that happened. Parikshit Maharaj should become the king first. Okay, then after becoming the king, he should rule his subjects. Then when he was ruling his subjects, then how he was cursed, that should be mentioned. Because that question also came up in the previous chapter, that how Maharaj Parikshit, why did he leave? He had so much opulence, why did he leave his kingdom and other things, and why did he go to the forest? So to set that context, first Maharaj Parikshit had to become the king. And if Maharaj Parikshit had to become the king, then Maharaj Yudhishthira and the Pandavas should leave the kingdom. And for them to leave, then Dhritarashtra should leave first. Right? So when Dhritarashtra quits home, then after that, then Krishna leaves. And then when Krishna leaves, then Pandavas don't want to remain as kings. Then they also leave. And before leaving, they coronate Maharaj Parikshit as the king. And then Maharaj Parikshit, he rules and he does his activities. And then he goes to the forest, he hunts, and then he's cursed because he was hungry and all those things. Shamikar, Shichangi, everything happens. And then Shukdev Goswami meets Maharaj Parikshit. Okay, so Shuta Goswami now, his whole point of speaking this is to set the context, the flow, that Dhritarashtra and his uncles, the previous generation quits home, then the next generation of the Pandavas, they quit home, and then the last generation, Maharaj Parikshit, he takes up the kingdom. Okay, and then his life continues like this. And in between, there are nice instructions. Between the stories itself, there are instructions. In this chapter, we will see the discussion between Vidura and Dhritarashtra, okay, and also on how one should not lament, okay, on the transcendental topics which Narad Muni will tell to Maharaj Yudhishthira. Okay, so this is the breakup of this chapter, where the first 14 verses will speak about Vidura's return to Hastinapur. Okay, so he returns, and the first 2 verses will speak that Vidura enlightened by Maitreya. Because if Dhritarashtra has to quit home, he had no intention of quitting home. So someone should provoke him to quit home. So then it should start with Vidura, who provokes him. So Vidura got instruction from Maitreya, and then to help his elder brother, Vidura comes to Hastinapur. Okay, so and then Vidura's welcome, how he was welcomed at Hastinapur, and Vidura's basically the importance of Vidura's presence in the citizens or amongst the royal family of Hastinapur, that is mentioned. Then 8 to 11, Maharaj Yudhishthira will inquire about Vidura's travels, okay, and about the Vrishni dynasty also. And 12 to 14, Vidura will respond. And then Sudha Goswami will tell the purpose of why Vidura has come back to Hastinapur. Because Vidura, he left Hastinapur because he was insulted by Duryodhana. Correct? And Vidura knew that my instructions are falling on deaf ears. Okay. Neither Duryodhana is going to listen to this, and obviously, if Duryodhana does not want his father to listen, even if I speak to Dhritarashtra, he will also not listen. Okay, so there is no point. The annihilation of the whole Kuru dynasty is at hand, so therefore there is no point to stay in a place where I am insulted so much. Okay, even for giving good instructions. So Vidura leaves the palace, okay, the city, and he takes up this Vanaprastha life. Okay, so one who has taken Vanaprastha life, he has no purpose coming back to his previous house. Okay, but still Vidura comes back because he wanted to enlighten Dhritarashtra. Because he was compassionate on him. We will see the details here. Srila Prabhupada writes so much in the purports, very nice. So from 15 to 17, Vidura observes the situation of how everything is going on in the kingdom. And he sees, we will discuss when this text comes, we will see that Yudhishthira Maharaj, or this is Vidura, he's gathering the situation, and he sees that Yudhishthira Maharaj is ruling the whole kingdom very nicely. Okay, and Dhritarashtra, he's just like a beggar, begging for Maharaj Yudhishthira. So Dhritarashtra's guidance is not required for Maharaj Yudhishthira anymore. Okay, he's the elder, but then because Maharaj Yudhishthira himself is being guided by Krishna, and he's taking care of the kingdom very nicely, so Dhritarashtra's presence is not required. Okay, and Dhritarashtra himself is in a very abominable situation. So this 15 to 17, they discuss these things of how Vidura perceives the situation in Hastinapur. Then from 18 to 28, Vidura goes and speaks to Dhritarashtra. And the first 5 verses from 18 to 22, he speaks about the influence of time or Kala, because Dhritarashtra has become very old, but still he could not see his impending death. And Vidura, he incites him that this is not the way one should live when he has attained old age. Then 21 to 27 is Vidura teaching renunciation to Dhritarashtra. Okay, so if you see from 18 to 22, I have mentioned inevitable time, but 21 is also included here. So 21 and 22 will speak about inevitable time, but Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he specifically writes that from 21 to 27, Vidura is specifically speaking about renunciation, of how Dhritarashtra should renounce his position of being a beggar of under Maharaj Yudhishthira and the Pandavas. So Dhritarashtra, then he's convinced. Okay, then he leaves, and he leaves. When he leaves, Gandhari also follows him. Okay, and Vidura also follows him. So Dhritarashtra, Vidura, and Gandhari, they all leave. So these two, this is explained in these two texts for 29 and 30. Then 31 to 37, Yudhishthira Maharaj's lifestyle is explained in one verse, and then he goes to pay obeisances to Dhritarashtra, to his elders, but he could not find any. And then he sees Sanjaya, who's there along with him, and then the discussion between them, and they both are lamenting the loss of Dhritarashtra, Vidura, and Gandhari. At that exact moment, Narad Muni comes, okay, and then he gives instructions to Yudhishthira Maharaj and shatters his whole illusory or apparent bodily affection for his elder father, or his father, Dhritarashtra. So this is how this this chapter goes. Okay, and it's an important chapter because there are multiple instructions. One is Vidura speaking to Dhritarashtra. Okay, so philosophically we should understand this is meant for us, and how we should not lament for bodily relations. That Narad Muni will speak to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Okay, so we will start with text 1. This is Suta Goswami speaking to Shaunaka Rishi. While travelling on a pilgrimage, Vidura received knowledge of the destination of the self from the great sage Maitreya, and then returned to Hastinapur. He became as well versed in the subject as he desired. So Vidura received knowledge of the destination of the self. Okay, so destination of the self basically means that he gathered. We will see, that discussion will come in the third canto. Okay, we will see that Vidura, he understood the destination of the self of the Karmis. Okay, what is their destination? Of the Jnanis, what is their destination? And the highest destination, which is to go back home, back to Godhead. And when he learned about all these different aspects, he became completely well versed in the subject as he desired. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about Vidura here. Okay, and then he also gives a hint, or basically tells that why Vidura has come back to Hastinapur. He says Vidura was very much attached to his elder brother, and all along he tried to guide him on the right path. But Dhritarashtra did not listen. So Vidura felt that because of inevitable time, now is not the time for Dhritarashtra to listen to my instructions. Because Vidura has been instructing Dhritarashtra throughout his whole life, basically. Okay. But Dhritarashtra was not in a position to listen to him because of his bad association, which were his sons himself. Dhritarashtra's bad association was his sons. Okay, Duryodhana, Dushasana, like this. And also his desire to become the king. Okay, this Prabhupada explains in the purport that actually Dhritarashtra is the eldest son, so he is supposed to inherit the kingdom. Okay. But Pandu becomes the king because Dhritarashtra is blind from birth, and that makes him unqualified. It disqualifies him from becoming the king. But due to circumstances, Maharaj Pandu, he went to forest. He was not interested in remaining in the city, and then over a due course of time, Maharaj Pandu loses his life. He dies. So now Dhritarashtra is by force he is the king, because Vidura could not become the king, even though he is born of the same father, Vyasadeva, but he was the son of a Shudrani. So he could not become the king. So Dhritarashtra was forcibly made the king, and now he has got used to it. Okay. So by circumstances, Dhritarashtra has become the king, and now he does not want to relinquish it. And because of the bad association with his sons, Duryodhana, Dushasana, and others, now it strengthened his desire to remain as the king. Okay. So it does not matter how much Vidura speaks to Dhritarashtra, and Duryodhana definitely will not listen. Does not matter at that particular circumstance, before the battle of Kurukshetra, whatever Vidura spoke, the same subject matter, Dhritarashtra could not listen to them because he had his Mahatvakanksha, he had his desires which he thought could be fulfilled through his sons. But at this point of time, after everything is done and dusted, all the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra have been killed. Okay, and there's no point. Maharaj Yudhishthira is the king, and Dhritarashtra could not do anything about it. So this is the opportune moment where Vidura's inspection might have a very good effect on Dhritarashtra. So thinking all this, Vidura comes back to the kingdom. Okay. So he tried, because he was attached to his elder brother, he tried to guide him on the right path all along, but he was not in a position to listen. But now Vidura comes back with understanding that now he will be able to listen if I tell him all these things. Okay. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives a summary of this and he says, the 13th chapter describes the arrival of Vidura, Dhritarashtra leaving the palace on the instruction of Vidura, and Narada's instruction to allay the lamentation of Yudhishthira in order to describe the coronation of Parikshit, just as the story of Ashwathama throwing the Brahmastra was told in relation to Parikshit's birth. Basically setting the context. Okay. Text 2. After asking various questions and becoming established in the transcendental loving service of Lord Krishna, Vidura retired from putting questions to Maitreya Muni. Which basically means that he is satisfied. Now Vidura, one inquires, one has this tendency, or one inquires with something if he is not satisfied, or if he has doubts, or if he wants to know something. Whenever someone wants to know something, basically means that he is not completely satisfied yet. Okay. Only when one is fully satisfied, he has nothing more to know or nothing more to do. Okay. But Vidura, he attained that satisfaction after putting forth questions to Maitreya and after receiving the responses from him. So once he has received all responses for which he had questions, then he was fully satisfied basically. Okay. So therefore he retired from putting questions to Maitreya Muni. Srila Prabhupada explains that about satisfaction, and he says, neither fruitive activities nor dry philosophical speculation can give one satisfaction, because by nature a living being is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and all the Vedic literatures gave him direction towards that ultimate end. Okay, so this is straightforward. And inquiring from the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada instructs us, and he says, like Vidura, an inquisitive conditioned soul must approach a bona fide spiritual master like Maitreya, and by intelligent inquiries must try to know everything about karma, fruitive activities, jnana, philosophical research for the supreme truth, and yoga, the linking process of spiritual realization. So basically that's indicative of these are the questions which Vidura put forth to Maitreya, and he received responses for them. Okay, and one is this inquisitive. The conditioned soul should be inquisitive, okay, and he should approach a bona fide spiritual master, and his inquiries should be intelligent. Okay. This is also important. We should not ask for frivolous inquiries to the spiritual master. Many conditioned soul normally. Okay, we have seen even in the life of Srila Prabhupada and even in the life of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, they come thinking, it's a great sadhu, and if I touch his feet and gives me blessing, then I'll attain whatever material desires I have. I'll get all kinds of material opulence, or my desires will be fulfilled. And people come and take blessings or want to take blessings from the sadhu. But Srila Prabhupada did not like that. Okay, he said, what's the point of these blessings? When you approach the spiritual master should be approached for inquiring about the ultimate goal of life, not for becoming entangled in the material world itself. Okay, that's not the goal of approaching the sadhu. You should not approach a sadhu to be in the material world. That defeats the whole purpose. Okay, that's it's basically it's useless. Just like in the same way, if Krishna can give us the whole spiritual world, but we approach Krishna for material benefits, it's foolishness. Krishna speaks about this in Bhagavad Gita at many places. It's mudha, or those whose knowledge have been demolished by illusion, destroyed by illusion. These are the people who go to the demigods. So these are the people who come with material benefits to the Supreme Lord. That makes no sense. Okay, so therefore the inquiries or the desire should be to know or to gain transcendental knowledge by approaching the spiritual master. Okay. So Vidura was successful in approaching such a spiritual master like Maitreya, and he got the ultimate goal of life, bhakti, onto Govinda. Thus, there was nothing to be known further about spiritual progress. Okay. Text 3 and 4. When they saw Vidura return to the palace, all the inhabitants, Maharaj Yudhishthira, his younger brothers, Dhritarashtra, Satyaki, Sanjaya, Kripacharya, Kunti, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, Uttara, Kripi, many other wives of the Kauravas and other ladies with children all hurried to him in great delight. It so appeared that they had regained their consciousness after a long period. Okay, so if we understand the whole context of Mahabharata, Vidura was not only the well-wisher of Dhritarashtra, okay, by his knowledge, by his character, by his qualification, okay, whoever used to go to him, he always used to enlighten them with his very knowledge and his qualifications. So everybody was attracted and attached to him that way. But after Vidura left, okay, the Pandavas were not there anyways, okay, and all the other citizens of Hastinapur also, when Vidura left, they felt very morose because they do not have a guide with them anymore, okay, and the kind of situation that was there at that time with Dhritarashtra completely out of his mind and Duryodhana not willing to listen to anybody and the whole destruction of the dynasty at hand, nobody was there to absolve them or nobody was there to give them solace at the time of this calamity. Okay, so they used to, you can just understand from emotional point of view that they were thinking or they would be contemplating of if Vidura was there, it would have been so good by hearing his instructions in this time of calamity. Okay, but he was not there. Okay, he went on a pilgrimage, so he was not there. And when the battle of Kurukshetra happened and so many calamities came forth upon all these people, then nobody was there to guide them or give solace to them. Okay. But now when Vidura comes back, then they are extremely happy that finally they are able to see him, because they were not even aware that whether they will see Vidura or not. He went for a pilgrimage and nobody knew whether he will come back. But now he has come back. So it's a surprise mixed with lots of affection. And we see the next verse, they start crying actually just by looking at Vidura. So Srila Prabhupada explains, or he gives the details about Gandhari. Okay, and so we can just read that. And about Pritha, about Kunti, Srila Prabhupada writes, she is the incarnation of the success potency of the personality of Godhead. Okay, and okay. I think so this is fine. Then he speaks about Draupadi and how Draupadi is partly an incarnation of goddess Shachi, the wife of Indra. So that's why Draupadi is also sometimes mentioned that she is the incarnation of goddess of fortune. Okay, the goddess of fortune basically is the Shachi, the wife of Indra from the heavenly planets. So she has the potency of the goddess of fortune, of Lakshmi Devi. So therefore she is also called as the goddess of fortune, Shachi also. And because Draupadi is partly an incarnation of goddess Shachi, or the wife of Indra, so therefore she is also called as an incarnation of the goddess of fortune as Lakshmi Devi. Dhana Lakshmi basically. Okay, then Srila Prabhupada speaks about Subhadra. And basically the different personalities were mentioned in this text. Okay, text 5. With great delight, they all approached him as if life had returned to their bodies. They welcomed each other in due manner by exchanging obeisances and embracing. In the absence of consciousness, the limbs of the body remain inactive. But when consciousness returns, the limbs and senses become active and existence itself becomes delightful. So this is the kind of experience which these people they felt when Vidura returned. So Vidura was so dear to the members of Kaurava family that his long absence from the palace was comparable to inactivity. Okay, and all of them were feeling acute separation from him. So his return was joyful to all, just as we discussed. Text 6. You see, due to anxieties and long separation, they all cried out of affection. King Yudhishthira then arranged to offer sitting accommodations and a reception. So they had anxiety. anxiety was because nobody was there to guide them, to give solace to them, to pacify them. And long separation, because they never knew that Vidura was going to come back. So because of these two, they all cried out of affection when they saw Vidura coming to Hastinapur. So King Yudhishthira then arranged to offer sitting accommodations and a reception. Okay, text 7. After Vidura ate sumptuously and took sufficient rest, he was comfortably seated. Then the king began to speak to him, and all who were present there listened. So King Yudhishthira was expert in reception also, even in the case of his family members. Vidura was well received, and after bathing, arrangement for bathing was done, for sumptuous dinner. Everything was done by the king. According to Indian moral codes, even an enemy received at home should be so well received that he will not feel any fearful situation. A person when received at home should be treated as a relative. Basically, in this purport, Srila Prabhupada gives instructions on how one should receive a guest. Okay. How Maharaj Yudhishthira received Vidura, and this is the standard of receiving anyone who comes to our house, receiving of guests. So after Maharaj Yudhishthira has taken care of Vidura very nicely, then he puts forth some questions to Vidura. Okay, so we will see that. Okay, text 8. Maharaj Yudhishthira said, "My uncle, do you remember how you always protected us along with our mother from all sorts of calamities? Your partiality, like the wings of a bird, saved us from poisoning and arson." So Maharaj Yudhishthira he is in a position where he has actually no enemies. Okay, he is actually a Dakshakur now because he has no enemies now, and he's remembering those times when they were undergoing so much tribulations, and how Vidura at that time he helped them a lot. Okay, so how he protected them, because when we are in trouble, at that time the one who protects us becomes more dear to us. So by looking at Vidura, by seeing him, by having his presence, Maharaj Yudhishthira is feeling. He's remembering all those things during which Vidura, he helped them, saved them from the calamities. Srila Prabhupada explains that he gives in this also he gives the context of how Vidura was always against the political ambitions of Dhritarashtra. Okay, and Dhritarashtra is a confused person. Okay, right from the start. And we will see, in purport also Srila Prabhupada writes that although Dhritarashtra was equally careful for the minor children of Maharaj Pandu, he was one of the intriguing parties who wanted to wash away the descendants of Pandu and replace them by raising his own sons to become the rulers of the kingdom. Okay, so one side he is careful. Okay, he had affection for Pandu, for his younger brother. He had affection. Okay, and Pandu died. It came to when Pandu died, Dhritarashtra cried a lot. Okay, and he also, being the king, he was also equally careful in protecting the Pandavas. Okay, who had come from the forest, and he was taking care of them nicely under the guidance of Bhishma and Vidura, like that. But he was also the intriguing parties who wanted to kill the Pandavas. So in one side he had affection for the Pandavas, okay, but his affection suppressed by his intense desire to see his sons as the king and himself to remain as the king. Okay, so one side he had the affection, the familial affection, the emotional bondage with the Pandavas. On the other side he had his own desires of power and prestige. Okay, so these two always had a conflict within the mind of Dhritarashtra. So you will see throughout Mahabharata, it's always been like this. On one side, the affection part will come up. At the same time, the hatred part will also come up. Okay, and that hatred is driven by his desire to be the king and to have his sons as the king. And also, Duryodhana was completely controlling Dhritarashtra. So whatever Duryodhana used to say, Dhritarashtra used to agree. And Vidura was against this, this ambition of Dhritarashtra because he is being unfair to the Pandavas. So that is why Vidura was more or less partial to the Pandavas due to their political position. Because he knew that Pandavas' position is not, it's precarious, it's not proper. Okay, and there will be, Dhritarashtra will be partial to them because of his own material desires. Okay, and Yeah, so Vidura, he did not like his political ambition for the sake of his own sons. So before the battle of Kurukshetra, Dhritarashtra's policy was peaceful annihilation of his nephews, which he tried multiple times. Okay, once he sent them to this Varnavrat so that they can be burnt in the fire by Purochal, right? And then everything was taken from them, and then the kingdom was divided. Okay, with the hope that the whole Hastinapur will remain and the Pandavas will rule under their subjugation like this. But that did not happen. Yudhishthira Maharaj, after conducting the Rajasuya sacrifice, he became the emperor, and Hastinapur, the king, has to follow him. Okay, so that also did not work. Then they contrived of doing this gambling match and taking away all their opulence. That also did not work. Okay, and finally, on the prompt of Duryodhana and Shakuni and Karna, they had another gambling match, and everything was taken from them, and they were sent to the forest. Okay, and even in the forest, they were not allowed to remain peacefully. Okay, during the last years of their exile, 11th, 12th year, they wanted to mock, and during all the time, and especially the 13th year, they had spies sent all over the world just to see where the Pandavas are, so that they can again be sent to the forest, and peacefully Dhritarashtra can rule. Vidura was against all of these things. Okay. So this instance of Varnavat, Srila Prabhupada explains here. And by Vidura's warning, the Pandavas escaped through a tunnel underneath the earth, so that their escape was also unknown to Dhritarashtra. So much so that after setting the fire, the Kauravas were so certain of the death of the Pandavas that Dhritarashtra performed the last rites of death with great cheerfulness. On one side he cried, but he was also cheerful because now he felt everything is proper. But Vidura always knew where the Pandavas were. Even when they were in the Virat's kingdom during the 13th year, Vidura knew where they were. Okay. Text 9. Yudhishthira Maharaj continues, and he asks, while travelling on the surface of the earth, how did you maintain your livelihood? At which holy places and pilgrimage sites did you render service? So this gives the context of why did Vidura decide to travel? Okay. And Srila Prabhupada specifically writes that in holy places of India, like Vrindavan, Haridwar, Jagannath Puri and Prayag, there are many great devotees, and there are still free kitchen houses for persons who desire to advance spiritually. Maharaj Yudhishthira was inquisitive to learn whether Vidura maintained himself by the mercy of the free kitchen houses, Chhatras. Okay. Text 10. My Lord, devotees like your good self are verily holy places personified, because you carry the personality of Godhead within your heart. You turn all places into places of pilgrimage. So it's a very famous verse. Okay. Bhavad Vida Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani Swatasthena Gadabhrata. Okay, so you have to memorize this, I think. So, so Srila Prabhupada's purport is important here. So this is basically the glorification of the devotees. The Lord's omnipresence is perceived and manifested by his unalloyed devotees like Vidura, just as electricity is manifested in an electric bulb. A pure devotee like Vidura always feels the presence of the Lord everywhere. He sees everything in the potency of the Lord and the Lord in everything. So because they are always in association with the Lord, therefore they themselves become the place or holy places. See, holy places, the definition of holy place is where Lord has come, okay, or he has performed his pastimes, or his temples are there. They are all, or where pious rivers are flowing. Generally, we say these are the holy places, because one who goes there, then he becomes purified by coming in association with these things, by coming in association with the dust in which the Lord has walked, by coming in association with the sacred rivers which flow there, by taking darshan of the deity in the temple. Normally, for general people, this is considered as the holy place, because these things are there. But if a devotee, or rather a pure devotee, an unalloyed devotee, always carries the Lord within his heart, okay, so his whole personality is always purified. So wherever he goes, he is a walking place, or is a walking holy place basically. It's a tirtha, because tirtha means that which purifies. Okay, and because the Lord is always there with his pure devotees, wherever they go, they purify that particular place. Srila Prabhupada explains in the lecture, holy places, you can go to holy places, you have to go to holy places to purify them yourself. But the pure devotees of the Lord are so merciful that they themselves roam around to purify the whole creation. Okay. So therefore, they are excellent tirthas because of the presence of Lord. One is the Lord is present in them, and whoever they see only the presence of Lord there. Okay, presence of Krishna. Purpose of holy places is association with the Lord's unalloyed devotees. Okay. The holy places are meant for purifying the polluted consciousness of the human being by an atmosphere surcharged with the presence of the Lord's unalloyed devotees. Srila Prabhupada goes a step further and he says the holy places are pure or are tirthas because holy men or sadhus or great devotees live in that place. Okay, so the presence of great devotees is what makes a holy place. Okay, and it's not how generally thought by people that holy place is holy because the pastimes are performed or great rivers are flowing there. No, it's not the actual reason. That is also there, but on top of that, the main reason is because the pure devotees are there in the holy places. Therefore, they are holy places. And it is a responsibility of any person who goes to that holy place to search out pure devotees who are residing in that holy place and take lessons from them. To go to some holy place of pilgrimage does not mean only to take a bath in the Ganges or Yamuna or to visit the temples situated in those places. One should also find representatives of Vidura who have no desire in life save and except to serve the personality of Godhead. And this is very prominent in the life of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. They were on he took his disciples on a yatra and he used to discourse on Shastra for 2-3 hours in the evening. Okay, and some of the devotees, they went to see the holy places, or rather to see and visit the temples in that holy place. But Siddhanta Saraswati was giving a lecture, okay, at that time, and Srila Prabhupada, it was actually recounted by Prabhupada himself. So he was sitting there and he was listening, okay, and there were only few devotees who were listening. So Siddhanta Saraswati, when those devotees who have come or who went to take darshan of the different deities in the temple, they came back. Then he told them that without hearing, okay, or without being present in these lectures, you will not be able to see the deities. If you go there, what you will see is only the physical form of the deity. You will not be able to understand that he is the Supreme Lord. You will not be able to purify yourself as much as by hearing or sitting in these classes and then getting purified. Which basically meant by hearing from him, their spiritual master, they will get the ultimate benefit of being in that holy place than by going to different temples in those holy places. Okay. So hearing is more important. The main intention to go to all these places is for purification, the process of purification. And purification primarily happens by hearing. Okay. Because one might go to the holy places, but his consciousness might be thinking of something else. Okay. But by hearing, the consciousness itself becomes purified. So therefore, one should go to the holy places to take association of pure devotees. They are in the actual service of the Lord, specifically by the process of hearing and chanting. By their actions, the pure devotees of the Lord can render any place into a place of pilgrimage, and the holy places are worth the name only on their account. So holy places are worth their name. Basically, means the holy places are called as holy places only because pure devotees are there in such places. Text 11. My uncle, you must have visited Dwaraka. In that holy place are our friends and well-wishers, the descendants of Yadu, who are always wrapped in the service of the Lord Shri Krishna. You might have seen them or heard about them. Are they all living happily in their abode? Okay, so Srila Prabhupada, he speaks about those who are always wrapped in the service of the Lord. And he says, Vidura left home in order to devote himself completely to the service of the Lord, but the Pandavas and the Yadavas were always wrapped in the thought of Lord Krishna. Thus, there is no difference in their pure devotional qualities. Okay, so what one should do is, if either he is remaining at home or is leaving home, the real qualification of a pure devotee is to become wrapped in the thought of Krishna favorably. Okay. You know what is wrapped? You know what is wrapped? Okay. Yeah. And he also says that demons like Kamsa and Shishupal, they are also wrapped, they are in rapt attention, or they are in thought of Krishna. But they are not on the same level as pure devotees because they are not favorable for the service of the Lord. And so two things are there. No? They might be pleasing the Lord, but it might not be favorable. But the actual definition of bhakti is that it should be pleasing to the Lord and it should be favorable also. Right? In Nectar of Devotion, this is explained. That bhakti means it should be favorable to the Lord. Now Kamsa, he also satisfied Krishna. Okay. By fighting with him or being envious of him, he also satisfied Krishna because Krishna wants to fight. So the great demons or the great Rakshasas who come, they also satisfy the Supreme Lord to some extent, or rather, his fighting potency or his fighting inclination, it's satisfied by these demons. So Krishna is pleased by them also, okay, in one way. But bhakti basically means it should be favorable for Krishna. These demons were not favorable to Krishna, even though they were pleasing him. Okay, so Rupa Goswami describes that, it should be favorable to the Lord also. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadinavritam anukulena krishnanu shelanam bhakti uttama. Okay, it should be favorable to the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada makes this point here that demons like Kamsa and Shishupal are not on the same level as pure devotees like Vidura, the Pandavas and the Yadavas, because they were favorable to Krishna. Okay, so these were the inquiries by Maharaj Yudhishthira. So he first in the 8th verse he he inquired that, do you remember how much affectionate you are by protecting us from all the calamities? And how did you maintain your livelihood, and which holy places and pilgrimages did you render service? Basically means, did you meet, what all did you discuss with your spiritual master? And you yourself are holy place personified. Okay, you yourself are holy place personified. So wherever you went, you have purified that particular place. Okay, so it's glorifying Vidura here. Okay. Because Vidura went to many places, okay, and he also served at many places. But it is not that Vidura has to become purified by serving at those places. Vidura himself is so pure that wherever he goes, that holy place is purified. Okay, that is what Yudhishthira Maharaj is telling to Vidura, that you yourself are holy places personified. Then, and you in your wanderings, you should have also gone to Dwaraka. So are the Vrishnis, are the descendants of Yadu, are they nice? Are they well? Are they living happily in their abode? So these were the inquiries. Okay. So listening after these inquiries, Maharaj Vidura, Mahatma Vidura, he says, thus being questioned by Maharaj Yudhishthira, Mahatma Vidura gradually described everything he had personally experienced except news of the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty. Compassionate Mahatma Vidura could not stand to see the Pandavas distressed at any time. Therefore, he did not disclose this unpalatable and unbearable incident, because calamities come of their own accord. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada says that according to Niti Shastra, one should not speak an unpalatable truth to cause distress to others. Distress comes upon us in its own way by the laws of nature. So one should not aggravate it by propaganda. It basically means that the Pandavas will get to know this ultimately, but this is not. He does not want to be the person who gives distress to the Pandavas, who are the pure devotees. So for Vidura, it was impossible to disclose an unpalatable piece of news like the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty, because he knew that Pandavas were very close to Krishna. So therefore, he purposely refrained from it. And this news will be given by Arjuna when he comes back. Text 14. Thus Mahatma Vidura, being treated just like a godly person by his kinsmen, remained there for a certain period just to rectify the mentality of his eldest brother, and thereby he also brought happiness to all the others. Okay, so this is the purpose of Vidura coming back. Yeah. So, and, in this text it's mentioned, right, that Devavat. So Mahatma Vidur was treated like a godly person, just like a demigod. Srila Prabhupada says that saintly persons are respected like demigods, okay, and by their qualification. Okay. And Vidura's purpose is to lift Dhritarashtra to spiritual cognition. Okay, so Mahatma Vidur did not return to his paternal palace to enjoy some material comforts because he's already adopted the renounced order of life. He's adopted the order of Vanaprastha, so he did not come back to enjoy this again. The purpose of living in the palace was to deliver his elder brother Dhritarashtra, who was too much materially attached. And Dhritarashtra, he did not feel ashamed to accept charity and hospitality of Maharaj Yudhishthir. Okay, so now the plight or the situation of Dhritarashtra is mentioned. So Dhritarashtra accepted the hospitality of Maharaj Yudhishthir because he thought that there was no alternative. So this is a sign of ignorance on the part of Dhritarashtra. Okay. So Dhritarashtra is from the royal family. So he was trained in all culture, now the Vedic culture. Okay, and he was also taught about all these things. But by illusion, okay, because he was completely satisfied, okay, with all the material things that was there, and he was ignorant of transcendental knowledge, he accepted this because he thought that there was no alternative. Okay. No, those who are followers even of the Vedic culture, okay, or the Vedic literatures, there are different sections. Karma Kanda is Jnana Kanda is there, Upasana Kanda is there. So, what kings used to do, or those who are Rajarishis, what they do is they rule the kingdom, and after a certain point of ruling the kingdom, they leave their palace and go to the forest for tapasya. Okay. And some, like Dhritarashtra, just stay there. Okay. With the understanding that they have performed dharma, they have performed their religious duties. Okay. Now it is not possible to go to the forest life and take difficulties there. So we will perform our religious duties there, and in the next life, because we have done pious activities in this life, in next life we will get a good destination. So we don't have to do anything else. There is no alternative like this. This is a position of ignorance. The message, okay, then yes. So Vidura particularly came to enlighten Dhritarashtra and to give him a lift to the highest status of spiritual cognition. But the talks of spiritual enlightenment were so refreshing that while instructing Dhritarashtra, Vidura attracted the attention of all the members of the family, and all of them took pleasure in hearing him patiently. So the words which Vidura is going to speak to Dhritarashtra basically was heard by the whole, everybody. Okay, Gandhari was also there, Kunti was there, everybody was there. Okay. Text 15. As long as Vidura played the part of a Shudra being cursed by Mandukya Muni, Aryama officiated at the post of Yamaraj to punish those who committed sinful acts. Okay. So this is Suta Goswami speaking to Shaunaka Rishi. Okay, because it is known that Mandukya Muni he suffered. Srila Prabhupada writes here, Mandukya Muni suffered because he has done some sinful activity when he was a small boy, and he was punished very drastically for that reason. So Mandukya Muni, when he went to Yamaraj and he asked why he was punished like this, and Yamaraj said that because you have done this particular activity of taking a straw and hurting an insect, picking that insect, so therefore you have to undergo this particular punishment, which Mandukya Muni thought was very severe. So he cursed Yamaraj, saying, you do not know how to give punishment, so therefore I curse you to become a Shudra. Like this. So Yamaraj had to leave his position on his planet and Pitraloka, and then he has to come as Vidura. And that time, Aryama, who is also one of the Pitris, one of the leader of the Pitris, he officiated as Yamaraj for that particular time. Okay, so this is mentioned here because Vidura is an Acharya by qualification. He is Dharmaraj himself. One should not think that because he is born in a Shudra or of a Shudra mother, so therefore he is not qualified to instruct anybody. Because even though he did not, he was not even considered a Kshatriya, okay, what to speak of a Brahmana, because he could not inherit any kingdom. When Pandu died, then Dhritarashtra, even though he was blind and unqualified to become a king, still Vidura was not given the kingdom even though he was so qualified. Correct? Because he was considered to be below that of the Kshatriyas. But here, by his qualification, by his spiritual enlightenment, which he has gained by traveling all over the world and getting trained by Maitreya, he was considered much more perfect. He was considered as an Acharya. Okay, and then he was being listened to by great personalities like Pandavas, Dhritarashtra, and even Kripacharya was there. Okay, all the other Brahmanas, they were also listening to Vidura's instructions to Dhritarashtra. Okay. So Vidura played the part of a Shudra, okay, being cursed by Manduka Muni. But his position is that of Yamaraj, his Dharmaraj himself, who is qualified to instruct everybody. Okay. And Srila Prabhupada also writes here that Vidura came to preach because Yamaraj couldn't. Okay, and he gives this, that there are more wrongdoers than righteous men. Therefore, Yamaraj has to do more work than other demigods, who are also authorized agents of the Supreme Lord. But he wanted to preach the glories of the Lord. So one who is a pure devotee of the Lord, he always has a tendency to preach. He wants to share that pure devotion to others also. But Yamaraj could not do that because he was always busy punishing the miscreants who used to come. Okay. So, and therefore, by the will of the Lord, he was cursed by Manduka Muni to come into this world in the incarnation of Vidura and work very hard as a great devotee. Such a devotee is neither a Shudra nor a Brahmana. He is transcendental to such divisions of mundane society. And he preached. Okay, he preached to Dhritarashtra. So his desire was fulfilled by the Lord of preaching. Okay. So Aryama, one of the many sons of Kashyapa and Aditi, he officiated. And he is also one of the 12 Adityas. Oh, okay. The conclusion is that Vidura was never a Shudra, but was greater than the purest type of Brahmana. So everybody listened to him. Text 16. Having won his kingdom and observed the birth of one grandson competent to continue the noble tradition of his family, Maharaj Yudhishthira reigned peacefully and enjoyed uncommon opulence in cooperation with his younger brothers, who were all expert administrators to the common people. So Vidura has come to preach, and now this is what he is observing. Okay, he is seeing that Maharaj Yudhishthira, after winning the kingdom, he also has got a grandson, Maharaj Parikshit. Okay, and they are competent to continue the noble tradition of the family, and they are expert. All his younger brothers and Maharaj Yudhishthira himself, they were expert administrator to the common people. So, from the kingdom's point of view, the precarious situation which was there before Vidura left, everything has been resolved. So there is no emergency in the kingdom. Everything is proper, everything is fine. So this is the proper situation to rattle Dhritarashtra basically from his comfort zone and make him leave his position. Srila Prabhupada writes, after the settlement of all disturbing conditions and re-establishment of the peaceful order of the state, and after seeing the surviving child Parikshit well satisfied, Maharaj Yudhishthira felt some relief as a human being, although he had very little attraction for material happiness, which is always illusory and temporary. So from Maharaj Yudhishthira's point of view, after everything is done, then he felt some relief because the kingdom will go on nicely. 17. Insurmountable, eternal time imperceptibly overcomes those who are insanely attached to family affairs and are always engrossed in their thought. So this word properly uses insurmountable, means that which cannot be conquered. Time cannot be conquered. Time conquers everybody. And this eternal time is imperceptible. Imperceptible means that it is not perceptible. You cannot observe it or you cannot see where it is going. Time is so subtle that it travels. Time goes. Okay, time goes by, but we do not understand how it goes by. Okay, it's imperceptible. You cannot perceive it. And this eternal time, which is imperceptible, it overcomes those who are insanely attached to family life. Insanely means, like mad person. They're attached to the family, just like crazy people. And are always engrossed in their thought. So those who are very deeply attached to family affairs, they are all crazy because they do not see the time is going and they have to meet their end soon. and they have to meet because it's insurmountable. Our duration of life is measured, and no one is able to enhance it even by a second. Okay, you cannot extend it even by 1 second. It's not possible. Every second of human life is meant for making an ultimate solution to the problems of life. That is repetition of birth and death. Okay, so every second of human life. Eternal time is passing away imperceptibly, and that their measured duration of life is diminishing every second. So they do not know this. Those, see, Srila Prabhupada said, no? They do not know at all how to solve the problems of life. So it's insurmountable. They do not know, but become engrossed in temporary family affairs, not knowing that eternal time is passing away imperceptibly. No, it's like right under one's nose. There's an idiom in English. Like whatever goes under your nose, you can observe it. But something which goes under your nose, which you cannot even observe, it is that swift. So time is like that. Okay, it's going, okay, but it's not perceptible. One has to be aware. So the Srila Prabhupada says each and every second should be utilized for attaining the goal of life. Because by illusion we do not perceive the going away of time. So each and every second we should always be aware. Basically means that we should be conscious that time is going by. If we are not conscious that time is going by, how will we utilize each and every second for attaining the supreme goal? Okay, so we should be aware that time is going by. So we should perceive the going of time. Okay, and this is what Vidura is going to tell or teach to Dhritarashtra, that time is going. And because of this travel of time, because time has gone, therefore you are in such situation. You have attained old age and so many problems are there in your body. Okay. Illusion is the cause of unhappiness. The happiness obtained on the planet Brahmaloka is also temporary and illusory. He's basically saying that Dhritarashtra, he's thinking that he's getting happiness by staying in the family life, but that kind of happiness, which is measured by time, is actually an illusion, because that happiness will end. Okay, it's like this. You want happiness for eternity, but it's measured, it's limited, because it's limited by the scale of time. So when time limits something, then it does not give ultimate happiness. So happiness anyway is not there, even in Brahmaloka, because Brahmaloka also there is time. It may be long time, but there is time. So any comfort of life or any material happiness which does not warrant an eternal life is but illusion for the eternal living being. It's just illusion because it's limited by time. Real transcendentalists are hungry for this happiness, Brahma Sukham. Or as a hungry man cannot be made happy by all comforts of life minus foodstuff, so the man hungry for eternal absolute happiness cannot be satisfied by any amount of material happiness. Okay, so any amount of material happiness, the main problem is there might be some satisfaction. Okay, there might be a sense of happiness. One thing is that sense of happiness is not complete because it's limited by the modes. Okay, so our body is limited, right? The body is limited because we are controlled by the modes. So even the experience of happiness is also limited because of the modes. Okay, one thing is we are controlled in our activities. So anyway, by performing activities, we will not be able to gain much. And whatever gain or whatever happiness we are supposed to gain, that is also limited because our experience is limited by the modes of nature, because of the covering. So covering does not only cover the soul, the covering also covers the happiness that a soul is supposed to experience. So the covering is both ways. Okay, it's covered in completely. Okay, it's covered completely. The soul is not able to manifest its complete qualities of being eternally happy. And even the material happiness that one tries to enjoy, that also the soul cannot experience completely. So in both ways, the happiness is limited. Okay. And and because of that, this lack of happiness, one always remains hungry. And this happiness, on the other hand, is also limited by time. One is the experience of happiness is limited. Okay. At the same time, the happiness itself, the duration of happiness itself is limited by time. So it's like, it's compounded. The miseries are compounded. Okay, limitations are also compounded in this conditioned life. So a person can never be happy. That it does not mean that only transcendentalists, they are renounced or they cannot be happy with this material world. Nobody can be happy in this material world. The transcendentalists are, it can be a transcendentalist or it can be a karmi person also. Nobody can gain happiness in this material world. And if they think that they are happy, it's because they are illusion. In illusion, they think they are happy, even though they are not happy. They are not getting happiness. But in illusion, they think that they are happy. That is the illusion. And Mahatma Vidur knew all this. And therefore, he addressed Dhritarashtra, saying, "My dear king, please get out of here immediately. Do not delay. Just see how fear has overtaken you." Okay. Now, Dhritarashtra, when he was living with Maharaj Yudhishthira, okay, he was not actually feeling fearful. Right? He's not feeling fear. Because now he's, okay, sons are dead, fine. He could not become the king. Okay, what can be done? But now his life is going on. He is being treated as a king. Even though he is not actually the king, the emperor. But Maharaj Yudhishthira, because he is so affectionate, he never saw anybody with an ill motive, even though Dhritarashtra, Prabhupada explains that in the purport. That Dhritarashtra, he always tried to do ill to the Pandavas and Maharaj Yudhishthira. But Maharaj Yudhishthira's vision is so pure that he did not see Dhritarashtra as his enemy. And he understood also that because Dhritarashtra's all sons have been killed, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari will be very, very sad. So he acted, Maharaj Yudhishthira acted in such a way that they never become sad, or they don't become sad, or they don't feel that they don't have a son. So basically Maharaj Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, they are behaving or they are dealing with Dhritarashtra and Gandhari just like their sons. Okay, so that they never have to lament for the 100 sons. Okay, so that that put Maharaj Dhritarashtra in a very nice and comfortable position. Okay, and Maharaj Yudhishthira used to address or treat him just like an elder. Obviously, he's an elder, but also as a king. Even though Maharaj Yudhishthira is doing all the administration with the help of his brothers, but Dhritarashtra was kept in such a position that he used to go and take instructions from Dhritarashtra, counsel with him, and do things like that, just to make sure that Dhritarashtra feels happy. So Maharaj Yudhishthira is doing his duty, but from Dhritarashtra's point of view, he should understand that he is in a very precarious position. But what he did was that he took Maharaj Yudhishthira's hospitality as the perfect etiquette, and he was completely satisfied and comfortable in his kingdom. Okay. So Vidura says, just see how fear has overtaken you. Okay, because when there is fear, then what do we try to do? We try to remove that fear and put ourselves in a satisfactory and comfortable position. Okay. So Dhritarashtra, he is in a comfortable and satisfactory position. But there is fear because of insurmountable time. Time is there. So fear is also there. But Dhritarashtra in illusion thinks that he has put away that fear. And he is not fearful anymore because he is very comfortable in his life. But Vidura, he is able to see that which Dhritarashtra is not able to see. He is able to see that actually this is a manifestation of fear. And then he will explain how this is a manifestation of fear. That whatever satisfaction you are feeling now is actually an illusion. You are actually fully covered by fear. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes here that Vidura's instructions were especially meant for Dhritarashtra, who was too materialistic, even though the king, his brothers and mother, everybody was listening to. So they are also listening that Vidura telling Dhritarashtra that he should get out. Okay, so they are also listening to that. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes that everything failed. We discussed everything failed for Dhritarashtra by the will of the Lord. He could not attain anything. And at the last stage, even after losing everything, men and money, he wanted to remain as king, being the eldest uncle of Maharaj Yudhishthira. And Maharaj Yudhishthira, as a matter of duty, maintained Dhritarashtra in royal honor. And Dhritarashtra was happily passing away his numbered days in the illusion of being the king, or the royal uncle of King Yudhishthira. But Vidura wanted to awaken Dhritarashtra from his slumber of being a false king, driven to disease and old age by the force of powerful time. So this is the fear, right? That you are already getting diseases, okay, and you have also attained old age. Okay, the symptoms of old age Vidura will explain now. By the force of powerful time, so you are overcaptured by fear, but in illusion you think that you are satisfied, you are happy, but actually you are overtaken by fear. everyone is the servant of eternal time, and therefore no one can be king in this material world. Dhritarashtra was particularly reminded of this false position and of the factual fearful happenings which had already approached him at that time. Okay, so text 19. So Vidura, from this verse, from the 18th verse onwards, he started instructing Dhritarashtra and speaking to him about the inevitable time. This frightful situation cannot be remedied by anything. Right? It's insurmountable. It cannot be remedied. There is no remedy for this or any person in this material world. My Lord, it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead as eternal time that has approached us all. Okay. No remedy for old age or death. There is no superior power which can check the cruel hands of death. No one wants to die, however acute one's bodily sufferings may be. Even though a person is very diseased, still he wants to live on, hoping that his disease will be cured. Okay, and I have personally seen this. Even though the person is, days are numbered, only 2 weeks maybe, but still he does, and body is completely rotting away because of diseases. But still there is no inclination to die. There is fear of death. Oh, I'll die, I'll leave, because attachment is there to family members, attachment is there to one's body. Even though the body is rotting away, the body is not serving us anything. It's only giving us pain and misery. Still the attachment is so strong that that person does not want to leave the body. Okay. Now if something is rotting, or vegetable is rotting, or something is rotting, or it's going away, it's of no use to us. We normally discard it. Correct? We don't want to use it anymore. We throw it away. But even when the body is rotting, when the body is overtaken by diseases, it's rotting away, it's giving so much pain, so much misery. But still, the conditioned soul is such that he does not want to give up that body. He does not want to die. So this is the actual illusion. Attachment to the body is so strong, and we identify ourselves with this body so tightly that even though the body is totally messed up, still we don't want to give that. So there is no remedial measure for either for old age or for death. But in illusion, we think that there will be diseases. I'll take these medicines, I'll do this, I'll do that. So many vikalpas, so many options are there. And you want to try each and every option. You go to allopathy, then homeopathy, then Ayurveda, do this, do that, take exercises. So many things people try just to make their body fit after attaining old age also. But they do not understand that anyway, death is about to happen and they should make a solution for that. They don't do it. Old age is the notice of the arrival of death. That's a notice period. It's saying, just like you give, if you go and rent an apartment, you have to give notice if you are vacating it, saying, 1 month notice. After 1 month, I'll vacate. So old age is basically a notice that in 1 month, you have to vacate your body. You have to leave this body in this particular time. So old age is that notice. But people do not know that, or they are ignorant, just like Dhritarashtra was. Okay. Yeah, and Srila Prabhupada, it's an amazing point. He says that he informed Dhritarashtra that there was no remedial measure by anyone or from any source in this material world. And because there is no such thing in the material world, death is identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, the inevitability is that it cannot be avoided. Just like the Supreme Lord cannot be avoided, death also cannot be avoided. Okay, so one person, everybody has to die. Therefore, Krishna is the same as death. It's inevitable, unavoidable. Mrityu sarva haraschaham. Krishna takes everything in the form of death. Wherever there is the influence of eternal time, there is the set of tribulations, namely birth, disease, old age and death. All of them are invincible, means they cannot be conquered. And we discussed this when Bhishma was specifying the Pandavas. Right? He said that all the sufferings is there because of inevitable time or the eternal Kala. And because of time, everything gets transformed. And in due course of time, there are different miseries. Adibhautik, Adhyatmik, Adidevik, then birth, death, old age and disease. These are bound to happen. Anyone who has taken birth, anyone who is under the influence of time, he must undergo these 7 miseries. He cannot escape them. It's not possible. So therefore they are called invincible. Text 20. Whoever is under the influence of Supreme Kala, eternal time, must surrender his most dear life, and what to speak of other things such as wealth, honor, children, land and home. Okay. Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada makes the same point. He says that he gives some examples of how people are so illusioned. He gives an example of this Indian scientist who was so busy in plan-making business that he had to attend a very important meeting of planning commission. But on the way, he died. He has to surrender his life. Surrender his life. Okay, no? It's a good word. So Prabhupada, surrender his life. Either we surrender our life to Krishna or we surrender our life to death, who is the form of Krishna itself. Okay, but if surrender to Krishna, his eternal benefit is there. But if one surrenders from life to death, then there is no benefit, even though death is a form of Krishna only. Okay, so surrender one must do. Either he surrenders to Krishna or he surrenders his life to death. But surrender must be there. Okay, this surrender cannot be avoided. And when one surrenders, and anyway he has to give up, one has to surrender his life. One has to surrender his wife, his children, his house, his land, his wealth. Either you surrender all this for the sake of Krishna, pleasing Krishna, or you surrender all this at the end of your life for the sake of death. These are the only two options we have. Yeah. Text 21. Your father, brother, well-wishers and sons are all dead and passed away. You yourself have expended the major portion of your life. Your body is now overtaken by invalidity and you are living in the home of another. Now he's counting all the fearful aspects of Dhritarashtra's life. He's saying that your father is dead, your brother is dead, his father Vichitravirya is dead, Pandu is dead, well-wishers, all the Dronacharya, Bhishma, everybody is dead, sons are dead, Duryodhana, Dushasana, all 100 sons, they're all gone. You yourself have expended the major portion of your life. Means you yourself have become very old. You have spent most of your life. You have spent your time. Your body is now overtaken by invalidity. Invalidity means that your body is not working anymore. It's invalid. Something that is invalid is basically useless. So your body is becoming useless now. Okay. And you are living in the home of another. And with all this, you are dependent on somebody else to maintain your body. Okay, how miserable that situation is. So the king is reminded of his precarious condition by these different words. Okay. His father Vichitravirya died long ago, Pandu died. Okay, so this we discussed. And despite all these reverses, he thought that he would prolong his life more and more. Amazing. Vidura wanted to point out to Dhritarashtra that everyone has to protect himself by his action and the grace of the Lord. One has to execute his duty faithfully, depending for the result on the supreme authority. No friend, no children, no father, no brother, no state, and no one else can protect a person who is not protected by the Supreme Lord. One should therefore seek the protection of the Supreme Lord, and the human form of life is meant for seeking that protection. So, a conditioned soul, he thinks that my father will protect me. My brother, my wife, my children, my land, my property, my opulence, all my followers, they will protect me. But it said, death and old age and disease, nobody can protect one from death, old age and disease. Okay, it does not matter how many wives you have, how many children you have, how much property you have. It does not matter. You cannot bribe death, you cannot bribe old age, you cannot bribe diseases. They must come by the influence of time. Okay, so protection should be taken only by surrendering one's life to Krishna, not by surrendering one's life to disease, death and old age. Okay, it's not only about surrendering your life at death, but normal conditioned soul also surrenders his diseases. Okay, surrenders himself to the diseases, he surrenders himself to old age, and finally he surrenders himself to death. Okay, so he's doing surrender. Surrender means what? Something on to which we do not have any control, or someone who is controlling us. Okay, we surrender to that person. So we are always surrendered. We are always surrendered to our miseries, to our condition in this life, to diseases, to old age and death. So surrender is anyway there. Okay, it's not that we are independent. We are never independent. And the conditioned soul specifically, is never independent at all. So anyway he surrendered to all these different miseries of life. But if he can take up surrendering to Krishna, if he can surrender to Krishna, then for once and for all, he can come out of all this miserable situation of surrendering everything that he thinks he possesses in this material world. Okay. Text 22, Vidura continues. He says, "You have been blind from your very birth, and recently you have become hard of hearing also." Right? Symptoms of old age. He was anyway blind right from his birth. Okay, so it's not that his eye vision is getting weak. Anyway, it's gone. Okay, anyway, he's blind. And recently you have become hard of hearing also, and now he can hear also. He cannot even hear properly. Your memory is shortened. He cannot remember things nicely. Okay, we have seen that with old people. And your intelligence is disturbed. So they cannot discriminate between what is right and what is wrong, what they are supposed to do and what they are not supposed to do. And old age, very old people, those who have been with old people, we have seen this, that when they become old, okay, they are not even able to do basic activities. Right? They're not even able to do basic activities of their life because they have no discrimination of what is right and what is wrong. So just do things. So, just like babies, just like children. Your teeth are loose. Okay. Can fall at any moment. Your liver is defective. Basically means that you cannot digest properly. Your blood, is weak. You have blood pressure. And you are coughing up mucus. So you are influenced with cold mucus also. So these are all symptoms of death. Death was nearing very quickly for him. Still, he was foolishly carefree about his future. The signs pointed out by Vidura in the body of Dhritarashtra were signs of apakshaya, or dwindling of the material body before the last stroke of death. Okay. So engagement in activities for protection from fear. Foolish men want to make a permanent settlement of this perishable body and think that their estate, children, society, country, etc. will give them protection. But we discussed, right? It's not possible. We have never seen that. We have never seen that in the history of this universe where these things have given protection to people from old age and death. Everybody had to go through old age and death. Everybody had to die. Okay, so these things, a foolish man thinks that by having all these things, they'll give me protection. No? When a person is about to die, his last desire is to see all his family members. Because he thinks that somehow they will be able to give me some comfort, some protection. Okay, I want to see them before I die. It's meaningless. Okay, because anyway he is supposed to give them, he is going to give them up. These relatives are not going to travel to the next destination along with him. No, this is not a wedding party. They are not going to come with him. He has to go alone, but still he wants to see them with the hope that they protect him somehow. He feels comfortable in their presence. Okay. Devotees feel comfortable by the presence of the Lord, of his devotees. Okay, and because they are all devotees, they'll attain a position where there are devotees. Okay, but a conditioned soul, he wants to have this last squeeze, last drop of material comfort by seeing all his friends and relatives around him at the point of his death. Okay, this is the definition of a conditioned soul. So they forget their permanent identity and become foolishly active for impermanent occupations, forgetting altogether their prime duty. And and the Srila Prabhupada writes that saints like Vidura, they approach such foolish men to awaken them to the real situation. But these people are so illusioned or so unfortunate that they welcome show bottle sadhus and so-called saints who can only satisfy their senses but cannot give them the highest transcendental knowledge. Okay, they cannot take them back home, back to Godhead. Okay, text 23. Alas, how powerful are the hopes of a living being to continue his life. Right? Verily, you are living just like a household dog and are eating remnants of food given by Bhima. So we are saying, I have told these things, but if still those things are not convincing to you, you at least consider this. You are living just like a household dog and Bhima is throwing food at you. Okay, at least this should make you rattle you a little bit so that you can come out of this illusion. So, a sadhu should not flatter kings or rich men to live comfortably at their cost. A sadhu is to speak to the householders about the naked truth of life so that they may come to their senses about the precarious life in material existence. Okay. So this is the duty of a sadhu. That's why we see Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, or Guru Maharaj also speak so strongly, so that it rattles the Dhritarashtras within us. Okay, so that we can come out of our illusion, thinking that we will be fine in this material life. Dhritarashtra is a typical example of an attached old man in household life. Bhima is particularly pointed out because he killed the two pet sons of Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana and Dushasana. Why was Dhritarashtra living there at the house of the Pandavas? Because he wanted to continue his life comfortably, even at the risk of all humiliation. Okay, and Bhima did not just kill the Duryodhana and Dushasana; he actually killed them in a very ghastly manner. Correct? He broke the thighs of Duryodhana and he basically tore open the chest of Dushasana. So, if a person is so affectionate to his son as Dhritarashtra was to Duryodhana and Dushasana, and a person, Bhima, has done this to your son, okay, how can you be so comfortable with that person giving you food? Right? You can just imagine how miserable the situation of Dhritarashtra was, but still he was spending his life comfortably, happy. Okay. The Pandavas killed each and every son, or rather Bhima himself, only one person, Bhima himself killed each and every son of Dhritarashtra. All 100 sons were killed by Bhima only. The other 4 Pandavas did not kill even one son of Dhritarashtra. All 100 were killed by Bhima. And he's still okay with that. Dhritarashtra. Such a humiliation. But he thinks that he's being taken care of very nicely. How powerful is the urge to continue life? Because he thinks that he is the king and he thinks he can continue his life like this. Okay. So how powerful the urge? He asks, how powerful are the hopes of a living being to continue his life even though he's so much humiliated like this? It's such a precarious situation. It's very, very difficult to understand Dhritarashtra's position. How can one be so illusioned like this? But persons like Dhritarashtra try to make plans to live here in a comfortable position with profit and interest, for they do not see things as they are. Dhritarashtra is blind and continues to hope to live comfortably in the midst of all kinds of reverses of life. But a sadhu like Vidura is meant to awaken such blind persons and help them go back to Godhead. So we can just imagine how responsible a task is entrusted to a sadhu like Mahatma Vidur. So preachers basically should speak like this, like Vidura, because the whole world is like Dhritarashtra. They are all totally conditioned. They are thinking that this material life will give them satisfaction, give them happiness. Does not matter how much humiliation they go through. Okay, they are beaten up just like dogs, but still they are happy. Okay, so one who's really a sadhu, he should speak like the way Vidura is speaking here, rattling, just shaking people's comfortable life so that they can come to their real senses and understand what is their real position. Understand that they are not this body, they are the soul. They are eternal servants of Krishna. They have to surrender their life to Krishna, not surrender their life to death and old age and diseases. Okay. There is no need to live a degraded life and subsist on the charity of those whom you tried to kill by arson and poisoning. You also insulted their wife and usurped their kingdom and wealth. So not only you have been protected by those people who killed your own sons, but you yourself have tried to kill these people. And still you are shamefully accepting everything from them. Okay. It's a degraded life. Persons like Dhritarashtra want to stay home even at their very ripened age and even in a degraded condition of accepting charity from enemies. So one is they are enemies because they killed your sons, and they are enemies also because you also tried to kill them. So in both ways they are enemies, but still they are accepting charity from them. Shameful position. It was better to die like his sons than accept such humiliating charity. Srila Prabhupada gets into this very nicely. He says it's better to die like his sons than accept such humiliating charity for Dhritarashtra. 5,000 years ago, there was one Dhritarashtra, but at the present moment, there are Dhritarashtras in every home. Okay. Yeah, so preaching should be required in each and every home. This is a very strong purpose by Prabhupada. Amazing, very amazing. To stick to family life up to the end of one's human life is the grossest type of degradation, and there is an absolute need for the Viduras to educate such Dhritarashtras even at the present moment. Okay. Preaching must go on for such Dhritarashtras. Vidura continues, text 25. Despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live, even at the cost of honor and prestige, your miserly body will certainly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. Okay, granted, you're okay with this humiliation also, but you'll not be able to sustain for a very long time. Anyway, you have to get to old age. You're already in old age. Okay, already your teeth are loose. Okay, your body is invalid. Already you have undergone so much tribulation. You're hard of hearing now. So body is already old and you are going to die. So you're getting humiliated now, and then your ultimate destination is going to be death only. So it's not that because with this humiliation situation also you're going to continue with your life. No, one side there's humiliation obviously, but then there's death also that's going to come to you. So what's the point of you living in this palace? Srila Prabhupada speaks about Kripana, because you mentioned in the verse. Kripana Jiji Vishoho, of one who is miserly and of you who desire life. So Kripana, Jiji Vishoho are significant. There are two classes of men, the Kripana and the Brahmana. The Kripana have a wrong estimation of his material body and wants to enjoy sense gratification with his utmost strength, even though he is humiliated and he has attained old age. But he must prepare for death. Since death is inevitable, why should he accept such a humiliating position for living? Life should be so regulated that one can achieve the desired goal. Such a life is called miserly because one cannot properly utilize the assets of human form of life. So therefore, Dhritarashtra's life is miserly. And by definition, all in each and every home, how many ever Dhritarashtras are there, their life is also miserly. He who has not properly utilized his material body is called undisturbed if he goes to an unknown place and freed from all obligations, indifferently quits his body. So this means he who has not properly utilized his material body, means that person who has not engaged his body in spiritual activities. Because properly utilizing the material body, a human form of life, the proper utilization of that is to engage oneself in spiritual activities, in devotional activities. But if one has not done that, then he should remain, or he should become undisturbed, or he should be called as undisturbed. Basically means that he should remain undisturbed and go out to an unknown place, freed from all obligations, and quit his body. Which basically means that one who has understood the spiritual goal of a life, or one has utilized his material body for spiritual activities, he does not have to go out of his house. Because he's already situated in transcendence. When we say utilizing the material body, we are basically saying that his activities are completely spiritual on the pure devotional platform. But those who have not utilized their body like that, they should at least artificially develop a sense of detachment and go to an unknown place. Unknown place means that place which nobody else knows of, where you have been to. Freed from all obligations and quit your body there. So the human body is especially meant for cultivating knowledge of devotional service to the Lord, without which life becomes full of anxieties and miserable conditions. And one should leave home without informing his friends and relatives. And he should give up the body at some unknown destination so that others may not know where and how he has met his death. Dhira means one who is not disturbed even when there is severe provocation. So Vidura is asking Dhritarashtra to become Dhira, to become sober, to give up all these things. Because self-realization is obstructed by such undue affection for family. A pure devotee, just like Maharaj Yudhishthira, he does not have undue affection for the family. He was detached, or he was detached, right? We see from the life of Maharaj Yudhishthira, also mentioned several times in previous texts that we have seen, in this chapter and the previous chapter also, that Maharaj Yudhishthira, even though he was surrounded with opulence, family, brothers, wife, like this, but still he was unattached. He was always endeavoring to please the Supreme Lord Hari, right? We saw this. But those who are not making such kind of endeavor, what they should do is they should artificially, at least, they have attachment for the family, but they should cut that attachment by going to a place where nobody knows where he has gone to. Okay, at least that should be done, and he should control himself by not coming back. That person is called as a dhira. Okay. The path of renunciation based, the path of renunciation based on a frustrated life. Okay, this is however the path of dhira. This particular point where one forcefully leaves his family and goes to an unknown place, the platform of the dhira. This is, however, the path of renunciation based on a frustrated life. But stabilization of such renunciation is possible only by association with bona fide saints and self-realized souls, by which one can be engaged in the loving devotional service of the Lord. Okay, so one might leave because of frustration, because there is no happiness in this material world like this, or because he thinks that he gets instructions like Dhritarashtra from Vidura, and that he should not continue or engage in undue affection for his family. So he might come to the platform of dhira, but if he has to go back to God and engage in devotional service, he should have the association of pure devotees. This is actually explained in the next, I think, right? I think the next text which we'll see next class. So now Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary is this. His translation actually of this verse. He says, "He is called wise who gives up this body, which has not been used to worship Krishna, after rejecting wealth and sons and going where no one can find him, while practicing bhakti." Okay. Text 27. "He is certainly a first-class man who awakens and understands either by himself or by hearing from others the falsity and misery of this material world, and thus leaves home and depends fully on the personality of Godhead residing within his heart." So now he's encouraging Dhritarashtra, saying, being a king, you might think that you are a first-class person because you are a king, but this is not actually the position of a first-class king. This is the position of degradation, complete degradation. If you really want to become a first-class man, then a first-class man is one who awakens and understands that the material world, there's only falsity. Everything is false here. There's no real happiness. There's only misery. And one leaves home and depends fully on Krishna, who is residing within his heart. Srila Prabhupada, he gives, there are three classes of transcendentalists, namely dhira, or one who is not disturbed by being away from family association. So Vidura is encouraging him to become a dhira. He is encouraging Dhritarashtra to become a dhira. Second is one in the renounced order of life, a sannyasi by frustrated sentiment. And three, a sincere devotee of the Lord who awakens God consciousness by hearing and chanting and leaves home depending completely on the personality of Godhead who resides in the heart, just like Narad Muni. Right? Narad Muni left his place, depending completely on the personality of Godhead who is there within his heart. He did not depend on anybody. Narad Muni just left home, right? We saw that. Correct? Which fifth chapter? Fifth chapter, yes. The idea is that the renounced order of life after frustrated life of sentiment in the material world may be a stepping stone on the path of self-realization. But real perfection of the path of liberation is attained when one is practiced to depend fully on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lives in everyone's heart as Paramatma. So there are three classes of transcendentalists, but they are on the level. Dhira is the lowest level. Then you have the level of sannyas, which one attains because of frustration. He's frustrated with this material world, so he takes sannyas, just like the Mayavadis or the impersonalists do. And the final one is a sincere devotee of the Lord. So one should come to that platform. One who desires material benefit by such devotional activities can never depend on. He's speaking about those who do devotional service but still are attached to material benefit. They cannot depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nor does the Lord give any direction to persons who worship Him for material gain. So one should not worship the Lord for material gain. One should worship only for transcendental benefit. This Prabhupada explains in the purport. So last instruction of Vidura is, please therefore leave for the north immediately, without letting your relatives know, for soon that time will approach which will diminish the good qualities of men. So Dhira, to Sannyas, Narottam and Paramahamsa. In the Kali Yuga, the good qualities of a man will deteriorate to the lowest standard. He was advised to leave home before Kali Yuga approached. Means Dhritarashtra was advised to leave home before Kali Yuga approached because the atmosphere which Vidura created by his valuable instructions on the facts of life would fade away due to the influence of the age which was fast approaching. Okay, but Vidura's instructions were so strong that Dhritarashtra will become completely determined to leave the family. Okay, but nowadays, the age of Kali, even if you repeat these things multiple times, still people are not ready to get out of their houses or even enter devotional service. It's so difficult because the influence of the age is there. So Dhritarashtra was advised by Vidura to at least become a Dhira in the beginning if it was impossible for him to become a sannyasi or a Narottama. Okay, or Narottama is one, a first-class human being depending completely on the Supreme Lord Krishna. Okay. So Dhira stage is attained after prolonged practice of the yoga system, one who can control his senses. But by the grace of Vidura, one can attain the stage immediately simply by willing to adopt the means of the Dhira stage, which is the preparatory stage for sannyas. The sannyas stage is the preparatory stage of Paramahamsa or the first grade devotee of the Lord. So this is different levels. Dhira, then sannyas, Narottama, completely depending on the Lord, and Paramahamsa, the pure devotee of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada explains that way. Okay, so we will stop here, and next class we will see how Dhritarashtra, Vidura and Gandhari leave, and Yudhishthira laments along with Sanjay, and Narad Muni comes, and then he gives very good instructions to Yudhishthira about this. So, yeah, very, very, very nice chapter this, because it contains all these instructions by Vidura, which are so much important for us to understand in our lives. Very nice, very good. We also see how Narada, he speaks to Yudhishthira Maharaj, so that also will be very good. Okay, so you have any questions? No questions. Because it's already late. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, so we'll continue next class. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanand.